if you're in sales, you like that competition,
Right.
but also it's helping people grow. And it's not just the money, it's also your career.
All right, Andy Cohen, thank you for being on my show. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Michael?
I am just fine. How have you been dealing with this whole COVID situation, working from home?
Yeah, it's been great. My company that I'm working for now, Bill.com, we sell a cloud application for paying your bills where you're not in your office. So we're living by that. We're 600 people all working remotely and haven't missed a beat. So
Good bet, good bet.
Well, and I'm getting more time with my family, which is nice. So I'm doing great. And
I love it. Okay, so just start off, SVP of sales at Bill.com, 600-person company working remotely. Give me like your 2 cents on what were some of the most meaningful leadership changes that occurred as we transitioned from in office to all working from home. As you're an executive within a 600-person company, what were some of your personal challenges or changes that you had to adapt to?
Yeah, so I run a sales team at Bill.com. We really thrive off each other's energy. We're mostly together in Palo Alto in a bullpen, high-fiving, ringing the gong, having a great time when we close deals.
Wait, there's an actual gong?
Oh, of course there's a gong. We're a sales team. And so, what I was worried when we got the 1 week notice to go remote is how do you keep that energy? Because so much of sales is the energy. And I'm just so proud and grateful to the team that we've been able to replicate a lot of that online. Not all of it, but a lot of that. So with 1 week notice, everybody goes home, and it's people in their 20s and 30s that don't all have the best work environment. They're sometimes still living with their parents, or they're in crowded apartments. And so everybody scrambled. Fortunately, we were all busy because Bill.com is an application that small businesses use to pay bills remotely. And so it's tailor-made for being remote business. But also every day we do Zoom stand-ups. We do Zoom happy hours. We even did a Quota Club dinner where I sent everybody steak and a bottle of wine, and we all had dinner together. And so we're trying to do as much as we can. And I think long-term, we all want to be back together again, but for short-term, we're making it work.
I think that's incredible. I think it's always fascinating to hear how different companies transition to this time, especially coming in from a leadership position where, a lot of, I'm sure that people are looking up at you and saying, okay, well, Andy, what do we do now? How is our culture going to look like? Every person comes in with their own, set of deliberations and the worries. But Andy, I want to go back a little bit, and, you did Stanford, Kellogg, transition to Deloitte, different startups, and Caring.com. When I saw Caring.com and your involvement with it, I got so inspired. I'm very passionate about the issue of using technology to help those that are aging. I'm especially looking at my own family and how it's getting more and more difficult to have coherent communication and to take care of them, especially as we're in a remote setting where it's not ideal to just go and visit and be with them all the time. Talk to me a little bit about the founding and management of Caring.com and where that went.
Yeah, and just backing up a little bit, Michael, my view on the business career is, a lot of people, I think, start their career and they want to have a plan. I want to do this for 5 years, this for 5 years. I'm going to get these skills and it's going to enable you to do this. And I look at the business career as 30% having the skills and 70% reacting to opportunities. I'm 56, I've had a 35-year business career. And it's sort of like a whitewater rafting. If you're down a river and there's rocks and you're navigating, you can know how to paddle the boat, you can have a good boat, but you don't know what's around the corner. And so I think if I was giving advice to young people, I'd be like, get all the skills and be prepared, but you're riding down a wild river. You don't know what's around the corner, but when you see the smooth water, you can go for it. When you see the waterfall, you can avoid it. You just have to be prepared, but it's only 30% under your control. 70% is going to be the river and how you react to it. That's my view on business. So Caring.com was one of those situations. I was in the position of losing both my parents at a young age. My dad had a heart attack and died at 67. And then my mom got lung cancer shortly thereafter. She was living in Chicago. I was living in Silicon Valley. I was in a demanding job, and I was flying back and forth trying to help her on the weekends. And it was an awful time because I love my mom very much and we were very close. It was horrible watching her struggle. And then it was also horrible. I was a MBA, smart business guy, trying to help her navigate the healthcare system, trying to help her try to hire a nurse, navigate Medicare, deal with end of life. And I just felt so unprepared. And after she passed away, it was awful. I ended up taking time off and kept talking to other people and said, well, how did you deal with all this end of life stuff? When you're planning your wedding, you can talk to your parents, you can find all these websites. When you're having a baby, you can read books, but when you're losing a parent, it's very difficult. How do you know what to do? And everybody told me that had lost a parent, they had no idea what to do. So I said, hey, there's websites for wedding planning, there's websites for having a baby, there should be a website for caring for aging parent. And it's tough stuff, but if you can help someone, you're doing God's work. You're helping them through probably the most difficult period in their life, losing a parent. So I started caring.com with that mission. And it wasn't that I had this whole business plan that I said, okay, there's an aging population, there's going to be a lot of caregivers, this is going to be a big business. It was like, hey, I went through this horrible experience and I knew that I could help people through this website. And so starting caring.com for me turned out to be a very good business opportunity, but it was also very cathartic for me as a way to get over my grief. And then it also was a way to really get a great team together, because what I learned is when you have a mission-based company, you can get great people that are there because they really believe in the mission. And so we had an awesome team at caring.com that, I had no trouble attracting the best engineers, keeping the best engineers. We were venture backed, so we were able to pay market rate, but also people really liked the culture and the mission. And so that was such a wonderful period. I founded it, grew it, sold it after 7 years because I'd raised venture, we needed an exit. But through that 7 years, had very little turnover and a great culture and a great fun. And I'm so proud. Anything I did before or after, that's the proudest part of my career, was starting a mission-based company and helping. We ended up getting 3 million visitors a month of people that were struggling with caregiving, and we were able to help them make it a little easier.
Wow, that's incredible. So give me a little bit of insight into this, this market right now. So when you're talking about the difficulties of taking care of aging parents or grandparents, what are the difficulties? Is it the lack of information that's out there, the lack of resources, the lack of matching with the right people to help take care of them? What are the biggest difficulties there before you came into caring.com and perhaps today onwards?
Yeah. So for answer is yes. It's all difficult. And unlike other life events, you have no one to go to for advice. Because let me give you the numbers. So there's roughly in the U.S. 2 million weddings a year, and people know that you spend $50,000 on a wedding, 2 million weddings. There's probably 3 million babies born a year in the U.S. Roughly. Spend a lot of money on a baby. There's 45 million people caring for an aging parent in the U.S. And it's going, the caregiving period is a 5-year journey on average, where the parent is less independent and needs the adult child to help them. They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on housing, on meals, on equipment, on procedures. 85% of Medicare spending is on the last year of life. So it's just a very expensive, difficult, emotionally draining. And all your other life events, you go to your parents and you say, hey, help me with my wedding, help me with my baby. You can't say, help me care for you in your death, because they don't want any help. They want to be independent. So it's just super difficult, all the above. And so from a business standpoint, there's lots of areas where I think there's opportunity on helping making this easier, both for the caregiver as well as for the senior. But a lot of it is for the caregiver. How do you help them help their parents via technology, via services? And this is a worldwide issue, because people are living longer, but they're not living necessarily independently longer. They're living in less independent conditions. And now with the issues with COVID and senior housing not being safe, more people are going to be aging in home. And so they're going to need more technology and services. So I think anyone who's interested in this space, there's lots of opportunity, and it's really nice if you've got your mission and there's margin. As a business person, you can overlap those two. And you don't have to get grants. You can do something. You can do God's work and have it be a business. And there's so many opportunities there. That's
incredible. I've been passionate for so long. Most recently, I was at a Y Combinator hackathon where we developed an app where we can, install a gadget on my grandma's TV, and we can then through her phone, click a button, it calls her TV, and she just has to raise her hand in order to answer the call because, lack of dexterity and lack of, tech understanding. But, and I became so passionate about this, this problem where you just the lack of communication and the barriers that are rising between the new generations and the older generations are so apparent that, you're looking at, the last years, I'm looking even, in the last 20 years when they're healthy and fine, but they're not really able to communicate with the grandkids. And, loneliness is one of the greatest difficulties at that age. So I think it's one of the most underserviced, markets out there. And I can't wait for people or myself to go and solve that. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Definitely. Andy, I want to take us now to your now most current role. So you transition and what you mentioned was that you're SVP of sales at Bill.com, but it actually started that you were a customer of theirs for a long time. You loved the product and you make that transition, right?
Yeah. So this is where I talked about, business career, I think is a river. You're just sailing along. And so I sold my company, Caring.com, had a good outcome, was trying to think of what to do next, and was having lunch with my friend, Renee Lessert, who had started a company called Bill.com. And I knew Bill.com well because I was one of their first customers and I used it at Caring.com. I also was an investor in the company. And so I was having lunch with Renee saying, hey, I'm not sure what I want to do next. I had this wonderful experience with Caring. I had a good outcome. And he said, hey, why don't you come help me at Bill.com? We're growing the company. We want to go public. I need someone to run sales. You'd be great at that. And I said, I wasn't looking to go be head of sales, but I liked Renee. I liked the company's good product at that. Yeah, let me do this for a year. This could be fun. And that was 4 years ago. It's been a ton of fun. We've grown the company, 500%. We've taken it public. It's been a really good outcome, but I wasn't looking for that, right? That was just something that came along. It was a good opportunity. I jumped on it. It's been very good for me financially, and it's been fun to be part of IPO, getting that experience. But I just wasn't my plan. It was like, hey, it's a good opportunity. It just worked out.
So give me a few insights about sales. What is it like to run sales team? What are some of the, I'm not coming from a sales background at all as an engineer myself yet. Almost every single person that I meet that I ask, what is your number one advice for me, would say, any advice to any young entrepreneur, learn how to sell, learn how to be a good salesman, not in the, necessarily like the bad connotation of the word, but be able to communicate your message effectively and convince others of why your idea matters. So I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, and then I never, when I was in business schools, sales was a 4-letter word, right? You didn't want to get into sales. You wanted to be in marketing. That was where the strategic, smart people went into marketing. The hustlers went into sales. So in my start of my career, I was a marketer, a product manager, I was VP of marketing. But when I was a VP of marketing, I would help out with the sales. And I was at a startup where we went through 7 VPs of sales. And each time we fired one, the CEO said, hey, can you help the product? Can you go in and try to close the deals? I'd go in and close the deals. And after the 7th one was fired, he said, hey, every time we fire one, you go in and you close the deals. Why don't you just run sales? So I learned how to run sales that way. And I realized it was really the most important function at a company because whether your product is great or not, you've got to get revenue for it to keep the company going. And those sales skills really helped me when I was a CEO, because when you're a CEO, it's 100% sales. You're selling investors, you're selling the first employees, you're selling the first customers. And so that sales skill is super valuable as an entrepreneur, not just because sales is such an important function, but also because sales, you're selling as a CEO all the time. And so I was fortunate to be able to be an interim VP of sales, learn how important it was, and then use that skill as my own company. And then this sales job I have now is actually the first pure sales job I've ever had. I've been a VP of marketing, I've been a GM, I've been a CEO, and but I have those skills, so I was able to do it.
So then how does somebody, the growing trend is that more and more, young entrepreneurs are coming from an engineering background and they're very focused on the technology. How does one like myself go and actually acquire these hands-on skills and an ability to sell? It doesn't sound like there's, a good class I could take at Stanford called how to sell. Yeah,
because no one would take the class because they would all think they don't want to do it. There should be that class, by the way. I think it would be one of the best classes at Stanford, but I don't think there is one.
Well, I think you might have to come and teach it. I would definitely take it. But now, seriously, I mean, I'm going through my journey, and how does a young entrepreneur like myself go and practice these hands-on skills and gets better at it?
Yeah. So the nice thing about sales is if you're if you're empathetic and a good listener, you can learn how to do it. But if you start a company, you are going to learn that your job is sales. So as an entrepreneur, I think going into it, know that if you decide to start a company, your job is going to be sales. The product part is easier. The harder part is the investors and the employees and the first customers, especially those first customers that are just buying on the mission, because version 1 of your product isn't going to solve their problem. It's going to give them a path to solving a problem. And so you really have to convince them. But you're be surprised how much selling you do in your life. Do you have a girlfriend or a wife?
Yeah, I have a girlfriend.
All right. So you're selling hard all the time, right? So you're selling. So I think part of it is just learning that you're selling all the time anyways. And the formal sales part is just a title, really, because everything you do in your life is sales, whether it's relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's investors. You are, Michael, probably a very good salesman. Thank you.
No, and definitely, I do think that, growing up with, in the entrepreneurship world, I do notice that the world, the 4-letter word does have some negative connotation, but I'm definitely taking to heart what you're saying. And this idea that at the end, selling, it's not just going and trying to get people to pay money for something. It's this whole idea of how do you get people excited about something that you're bringing to the table, whether it's investors or employees or your actual product, etc. But Andy, and then you're running, an organization of salespeople. And one of the things that I'm always curious about is, in sales, it always seems like it's very, compensate, the commission driven incentive. Like, I want to sell so that I want to show that I sold the most. And that means that I'm the best. How do you create a healthy culture that does have, these motivations, but, is also mission driven as a part of a 100-person organization?
Yeah, so it's important that as a company, and Renee's done a great job at Bill.com of creating a great mission focus. We're helping businesses operate in the cloud, right? And we've always been focused on that. In the last 6 months, we're super focused on it. So we're actually helping small businesses manage their cash flow and stay in business during these crazy times. So my sales team has that same mission. We're really helping small businesses. And then for motivating salespeople, yeah, it's the money, but it's also your career. What do you want to learn? How do you want to grow? Do you want to maximize your income, or do you want to be a VP of sales someday? And so we spend a lot of time on my team helping people grow and explaining to them it's not just the comp, it's also, how do you get to the next level? What skills do you learn? So we do a lot of promoting from within, where we'll take people that are just starting their sales career and get them to more senior selling positions or get them to manager positions. So a lot of it is just making sure we understand what people's goals are and then helping them achieve their dreams, whether it's money or responsibility or sales skills. So we do a lot of that, and that's how we keep the team, motivated. Sure, we're also trying to have competitions, and every day we have a leaderboard stack ranked on who's on top and who's not. If you're in sales, you like that competition, but also it's helping people grow, and it's not just the money, it's also your career. You don't
feel that the competitive side of it is eating away from the mission side of it, or creating a hostile environment. You're saying it actually, it just helps you be more diligent and focus more on what your motivations are, and your responsibility as a leader of such teams is to help people navigate what are their motivations and how do you help them get there in the easiest way possible.
Yeah. I mean, it could be cutthroat, but it doesn't have to be cutthroat. Yeah.
Right.
And then back to selling. A lot of selling that people don't understand. It's not telling someone. It's asking them questions. So when we use an application called Chorus, where we tape people's sales calls so that we can understand, help them do better, train them. And the good ones, it's the customer or the prospect talking more than the rep. So a good rep is asking you 5 or 6 key questions and then leading you to, okay, if you answer this way, you need our product. If you answer this way, you don't. So a good salesperson in life is asking the right questions, finding out how to help the person they're talking to, and then providing a solution to that problem. So selling is really helping people at a fundamental level. If you have a problem where you're spending 3 people to open envelopes and write checks and sign checks, and it's costing you a lot of money, we can help you save money and make your process more efficient. We're helping you. So good sales is finding a problem and solving it. It's not convincing someone to do something that they shouldn't do.
Definitely. And obviously, one of the most greatest changes that COVID is bringing upon us is this whole nature of sales. And while in my mind, I'm imagining a sales, relationship is that you meet in person, you maybe go out for dinner, you demo the product in person. And as a salesperson, you're able to gauge the other person's, how receptive they are to what you're saying. Now you have to do a lot of this over Zoom. And is there differences? Are there more difficulties? Where are we headed in terms of the whole sales cycle?
Yeah, so fortunately for us, we were doing it over Zoom anyways, so it wasn't really a change.
You were all prepared.
I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. Yeah.
No, definitely. But it is something I think that I've been thinking about. How do you take, a lot of the core relationships that we have in our daily lives, and now they're transitioned over Zoom, and you want to remain receptive. And actually, I have some friends who are thinking about how do you actually, leverage the fact that these conversations are over Zoom so that you can get even more insight into your sales cycle, like what's happening with Course.
Well, I will tell you that people have more time to talk to you. We're doing outbound, and people are spending less time in meetings, and they're more available to have these conversations. And they're also, I think, thinking more out of the box than they were pre-COVID on, are there better ways to do things? So I think for innovative technologies is a great time.
I love it. Andy, this was so good. I learned so much. I want to thank you again for your time. Before we leave, I want to ask you for 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Yeah. So, I mean, you would have to ask my wife for the truth, but I'll tell you what I think of myself. So I think determined. I think it's all about persistence. Life is 99% persistence. Yeah. So I am persistent. I'm also optimistic, because I think in business, you have to be. Everything is always broken, and nothing is ever perfect. And so you have to be optimistic. So I think persistent and optimistic. And then the other thing is, I'm just at this point, I would say that I'm focused on non-work as well, and just having a balanced life. So I think persistent, optimistic, and just focused on balance too, which
I love it.
Energy to do the work.
My high school principal was always saying balance, balance, balance. By the time we graduated, we all knew that phrase like in the back of our hands. And talking about balance, also involved with J Ventures and early stage investing, and then helping other young companies grow up. So we didn't even get to talk about that, but I love this idea, and I learned so much. So thank you again, Andy. This was really fantastic.
Michael, thank you. Pleasure to meet you, and hopefully our paths will cross again in person someday, because that is still important.
100%. Thank you, Andy.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.